Hello, welcome to this video. So today I'm filming it's kind of like a back to school, back to university kind of video. It's a video all about the things that kind of have worked for me and things that tend to work for most people when it comes to staying organised in the new school year or at university or at school, sixth form, some advice on how to stay organised this upcoming semester, this upcoming school year. This applies to online school as well as normal school. If you're watching this, you might be going back to school in the new school year, or you might still be continuing online. You may be doing half and half, I don't know. This applies to both, really. A general how to stay organised. The first piece of advice is to get yourself a planner. All schools, or most schools in England, already give you a planner, so you don't really need to get yourself a planner, but I always would get a different planner to keep at home, just to have more space to write something down or write in all my exams or work, because I used to work on the weekends. So planners and calendars, or whatever you use, like an online planner, they're also very useful. Anyway, I use this planner. This was the planner that I used for this academic year, and it's a passion planner, and you can get it online. I will have the link to the website in the description. This planner has made me realise this is the kind of planners that I like, because I could write out goals for the week, for the month. Setting goals was very useful for me, and also this one is amazing because it gives you a day. It's split into half an hour intervals. That was so useful for me when I had a really busy time at uni and with tutoring and with all the other things that I had to get done. Planners are so important because it's one of the only ways I kept myself organised, because I saw everything I had to do, or I would plan out my day, I would plan out my week in advance. Okay, the next piece of advice is to find a study space or clean your desk area. Having a clean desk is very important, and when I had exams, my desk would always get messy, and then I wouldn't be motivated to even sit by my desk because it's a mess, and I just don't want to sit at a place like that. So cleaning your desk or rearranging it kind of puts you into a more working mindset, I feel like. Also, if you're studying at home, I know you can't solve this. It's easier said than done, but having a study space is important. I know that obviously not everyone was able to have a study space, but even if it's just one part of a room and a small desk, that is enough, and that's your study space. And then when you go and sit down, you know that it's time to do some work. The next piece of advice is to-do lists. However, this piece of advice isn't always the best, because you end up with a to-do list that just never ends, and you're just constantly adding stuff, and then it can have the opposite effect where you just don't want to do it because you have this massive to-do list. So if that's a problem, there are so many ways to create to-do lists that don't cause that. One method, I don't know if that's the correct name, but it's a traffic light system. So you write out 3 to-do lists: green, red and orange. So the red is the most urgent things that need to get done, and the green isn't, but it's just on your list. It's still a to-do list, but you've broken it down into smaller pieces, and then it's easier to see. This is very important, instead of just having a whole list that's just confusing for you. Also, color coding your to-do list, that may also motivate you to actually look at it and be okay, I should use my to-do list. This doesn't work for everyone, and for some people it can actually be overwhelming. Look at all the things they have to do. There are ways to go about that and to make it work for you. Okay, the next piece of advice is to have an organization system. A place or a way to sort out all your notes and everything. The way I organise my notes looks different at uni than it did when I was at school or during my A-levels, because during my A-levels I would rewrite all my notes into a nice pretty notebook. I still have a notebook. I would rewrite all my notes, and then I would keep a folder for past papers and any other notes that I made. However, at uni it's different, because you study something for 3 months and then you have an exam, and then it's kind of forgotten. It is important that the knowledge stays with you, but some things can just then be forgotten and they're not relevant to your degree, for example. It looks different, and I'm still working on how exactly I'm going to stay organised, because that is something that was hard for me to figure out at first. I rewrote my notes, but that didn't work for me because it was too time consuming. I switched to typing out my notes, which works for me now, and I also like switched to printing my notes, except not in the past semester that I had. I didn't do that. I do keep a folder, and I'll show on the screen now the folder that I have for like my whole uni degree basically. Like I just put everything in there. I need to sort that out sometime because it is a bit of a mess. Oh well. For each semester I change up the stuff that's in here. Like this is empty right now because the semester hasn't begun. Whatever it is, whether that's folders or other types of folders like plastic folders, and I don't know what they're called though. For example, this. I got this for uni and I haven't used it. So as you can see, some things work for you and some things don't. I think it's a matter of figuring out what it is that works for you, figuring that out and sticking with it, because it can get to a point where you're like halfway through the year and then you forgot about your folders and everything's a mess. Okay, so the next piece of advice is, I kind of mentioned this already, is to have a colour coding system. During my A-levels, there was a lot of case studies in psychology, so I always made them pink. Even now, I still use that colour coding system. Any case study in my notes is pink. Having a colour coding system, whether that be for your notes, in your notes, or for your classes, or just for things on your to-do list, I think it can be used for so many things and it works. You associate that colour with something and it's easier for you to see, especially if you're a visual learner, and it makes it then easier for you to remember those things. The next piece of advice is, when you find out any like exams that you have, or any assignments or any essays or homework or whatever it is, whatever you call it, write them down like in a planner, or like make a list of all your exams again so that you can see this, like stick it somewhere on your wall. I don't know, you have it written down somewhere, and like if you have a planner you can write it in your planner. If you have a calendar you can write it in your calendar. There was stress and worry, but you can save yourself the stress and worry if you write it down. Next thing is to create a study plan, or kind of like a schedule for your day or for your week. This applies to both online learning and normal learning. Anytime I would take a day to study for an exam, or like especially close to exams, I would just plan everything out. I would like allocate a time block in my planner, and then for certain subjects I was studying for. This has been like my favourite thing to do, and I literally plan out my whole days, like especially when life was busy. Like with tutoring, I would even write down the time that my train arrived, because sometimes my train times changed. In order for me to remember it, I would just write it down. It makes you see your plan, and it kind of like makes you feel more organised, especially if you're struggling with staying organised and sticking to a schedule or a timetable. With remote learning, you may be struggling to find motivation to get out of bed and do your work. I feel like everyone has had that problem. If you like schedule out a day, it doesn't have to be the whole day. You could just schedule like the morning to get some work done. Even if it's just that, it definitely can keep you in the kind of work mindset. The next advice, which I have used like always, is to set your own deadlines. I would always set like a deadline, like when I need to start studying for something, and that would usually be like 2-3 weeks before the actual test or exam. If you have an essay due in like 2 weeks, make your own deadline for it to be due, like, I don't know, write in your planner that it's due like a week before, but also write the actual due in date. Especially if you like to leave things to the last minute, this can kind of like trick you into thinking, oh, it's due in this week, so I really have to work on it this week. And then that saves you, again, the stress and the worry of forgetting about it and not getting it done on time. The last bit of advice I have is to use a timer or a clock or an app that tracks your time or whatever when you are really struggling. So you may not really want to study for something, but you have to. There's no way, you can't get around it. You have to study for it. Like, set a timer for like 20 minutes and then do the work for 20 minutes, or set a timer for 10 minutes and do the work for 10 minutes. Usually you then get into the work and then you kind of like continue working for longer than that. It's always the first step of like actually getting started and sitting down and doing your work. So this can be very helpful, and I have used this technique like every time that I do any work, any studying, I just put a timer, and then it's like, no, I have to do this work. So it also helps you to get rid of distractions. So yeah, that would be all for the advice that I have on how you can stay organised at uni, at school, in the new school year, going back to school. I hope this is useful. I know some of it is kind of just like repetitive, and sometimes it's annoying to hear like, oh, make a timetable, and like that doesn't work for me, but there are ways that you can get around it and make it work for you. So thank you for watching. Any questions, leave them in the comments. I hope everyone going back to school is going to have a lovely time going back, if you are actually physically going back.